I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, act of terror. The FBI investigates the deadly attack in New Orleans as new details emerge about the suspect. We have the latest. Future of the gavel. The fate of Mike Johnson as House Speaker hangs in the balance as lawmakers return to Washington. We're on Capitol Hill. Called to Christ. How a conference in Salt Lake City, Utah is bringing together church leaders and missionaries. Plus, Maryland 5-0. Learn more about a year-long celebration at a shrine to the first American-born saint. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for joining us. Our top story tonight, investigators are learning more about a deadly terror attack in Louisiana and a separate explosion in Nevada. In New Orleans, at least 15 people were killed, including the attacker, when a driver intentionally plowed his truck through a crowd on Bourbon Street in the early morning hours on New Year's Day. The FBI now says the man responsible for that deadly rampage acted alone. And hours later in Las Vegas, a Tesla Cybertruck packed with explosives blew up outside of Trump International Hotel. Police believe the driver shot himself in the head right before the explosion. At least 7 others were injured. Officials have found no definitive link between the New Orleans attack and the truck explosion in Las Vegas. Well, President Joe Biden returned to the White House from Camp David today. He called the terror attack in New Orleans despicable and emphasized that the spirit of New Orleans will never be defeated. And as the investigation continues, earlier today in the Situation Room, the president met with his top national security officials for an update on both the attack in New Orleans and the truck explosion in Las Vegas. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen.
Tracy, among the victims of the terror attack in New Orleans, an 18-year-old woman dreaming of becoming a nurse, a single mother, a father of 2, a football star. And in addition to those who lost their lives, President Biden said today 35 people were injured.
In New Orleans, the FBI investigating the horrific attack. A U.S. Army veteran driving a pickup truck into a crowd of New Year's revelers on Bourbon Street. One woman described the terrifying scene she witnessed from her hotel room.
And to see immediately dead bodies laying in the street, both directions, is something that nobody should have to see in the beginning of the new year. It's heart-wrenching.
Among those killed, 27-year-old Tiger Besh, who played football at Princeton University, and before that, at St. Thomas More Catholic High School in Lafayette. The FBI identified the driver as 42-year-old Shamsu Din Bahar Jabbar, a U.S. citizen from Texas. He died in a shootout with police. Investigators now believe he acted alone. They found guns and what appeared to be an explosive in the vehicle, along with other explosives elsewhere in the French Quarter. After returning back to the White House from Camp David, the president did not take questions from reporters, but later, at a separate event in the state dining room, President Biden gave this update.
Today, the FBI briefed me that as of now, we have no information that anyone else is involved in the attack. They've established that the attacker was the same person who planted the explosives in those ice coolers.
Investigators say Jabbar posted videos that stated he joined ISIS before this past summer.
Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers.
The district attorney in New Orleans today described the attack on Bourbon Street as planned and strategic.
The perpetrator used a Ford F-150 Lightning vehicle that weighs over 6,000 pounds, likely because of its ability to cause extensive damage.
Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump's Las Vegas hotel, where that Tesla Cybertruck packed with firework mortars and camp fuel canisters burst into flames hours after the New Orleans attack. Law enforcement now identifying the man killed in the vehicle as Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty U.S. Army soldier and member of its elite Green Berets.
Obviously, we're always concerned in these sorts of events to ascertain what the motive is. We understand that's everybody's at the forefront of everyone's thoughts. And so looking into exactly what the motivation is remains our number one priority.
In addition, President Biden said the attacker in New Orleans had a remote detonator in his vehicle to set off and explode those ice chests. The president also said today the U.S. will continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorists where they are. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, thank you, Owen. And joining us now is Alberto Fernandez, EWTN News contributor. Alberto, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. The FBI now says that this was an act of terrorism and it was, quote, 100% inspired by the Islamic State. For those who may not know that much about ISIS, tell us a little bit more about the terror group.
Well, of course, ISIS is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, which came to fame in about a decade ago when it broke off from Al-Qaeda and, set up a state in what is now Syria and Iraq, which it held on for some years until it was defeated and kind of scattered, but it's still very active worldwide. It still commits terrorist acts. It committed a terrible terrorist act in Moscow last year and continues to kill Christians in Africa almost every day. So it's a deadly, deadly jihadist organization which has been blunted but not destroyed.
Yeah, obviously. And there were initial reports that the suspect's vehicle was spotted crossing the U.S. southern border days prior to this attack, leading some, including President-elect Trump, to surmise that the suspect was an illegal immigrant. But turns out he was actually a U.S. Army veteran from Texas. Alberto, that said, how does someone go from serving their country to become radicalized?
Well, unfortunately, it's not the first time we've seen that. We had the notorious case of U.S. Army Major Nidal Hassan in 2009 in Fort Hood that killed a bunch of service members, also inspired by jihadism, inspired by Al-Qaeda at the time. And in fact, the guy that inspired him was an American citizen born in the United States, Anwar al-Awlaki. So the fact that you were born in the U.S. doesn't mean that you wouldn't be an extremist. There's something in the literature and among experts which is called second-generation immigrant jihadism or second-generation immigrant radicalization. So service members can be subject to any kind of influence, leftist, rightist, jihadist, and unfortunately, as I said, we've seen this before.
Yeah, we have. What do you make of the timing of this attack in New Orleans during New Year's celebrations?
Well, of course, ISIS, or the Islamic State, way back in 2016, called on its supporters to use truck ramming operations against the infidels. And in fact, we saw this in Europe. We saw this in France. We saw this in Sweden, in Germany, in Barcelona, Spain, 2016, 2017. So unfortunately, it's come to our shores, and there have been other efforts to do this in the United States in the past. This is unfortunately has been the worst one that we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Alberto, thank you so much for coming on and for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Pope has also responded to the attack, sending a condolence message to New Orleans Archbishop Gregory Amen. It said in part, His Holiness commends the souls of those who have died to the loving mercy of Almighty God and prays for the healing and consolation of the injured and bereaved. And joining us now from New Orleans is Archbishop Gregory Amen. Your Excellency, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, especially in the wake of this tragedy. And please be assured of our prayers for the victims and everyone in New Orleans.
Thank you, Tracy. That's much appreciated.
As we mentioned, the Holy Father offered his condolences as well in a telegram sent to you. What does that mean to you, Your Excellency, and to the faithful?
It means a great deal to me personally that the Holy Father is thinking about us and praying for us and has asked us to communicate that to the larger community of New Orleans. It's not only thoughtful of him, but it's truly pastoral that he would reach out to us in this time of great difficulty.
Yeah, it really is wonderful. How concerned are you that the authorities are saying that this attack was 100% inspired by ISIS, a Sunni jihadist group? Does that worry you at all?
It worries me greatly, and one can only wonder where the next attack will take place. And so it is very serious. It should make us all wake up to what can be in the world. We go to bed at night or we wake up in the morning not dare dreaming that it would be anything like this. In fact, I remember in writing my homily for last New Year's Eve and for New Year's Day, saying that we would not know what would happen in the new year. Little did we ever think that it would be a terrorist attack on New Orleans. And you always think of something like this as happening in another city and another state, but never thinking that it would happen in your own backyard.
And I know that you are from New Orleans, a New Orleans native. You know, what does this mean to you? How's it affecting you? And also the faithful, what have you been hearing from them?
I think in general, Tracy, people are living in fear. Where is the next bomb going to come from? And there have been all kinds of rumors. At first, it was thought that he was working with others. We also knew that there had been other bombs planted. And I think everybody just lives in fear at this moment. And this is where the message of our Holy Father for the Jubilee year comes in, that we have to have hope, believing that God will take care of us and believing that justice will be suffice, realizing that justice will be realized. And so it's very concerning. And I just went on a faith walk this morning with other ministers. And our theme was that we have to give people a sense of hope, and we have to help them to move beyond this, to realize that we have a loving God who will walk with us in the journey of life. But it's very difficult for the families of those, and it's mostly young people who have died, whose lives have been taken, all 14 of them. And we are very sad about that. Also, Archbishop Hughes and I will be going to the hospital tomorrow morning in order to meet with the families of those who have been injured and are still in the hospital. So it is a time when we come together as a community, but it's also a time of great sorrow and great fear.
It is, and our faith is so important during a time like this.
It
Your
is
Excellency,
indeed.
Thank you so much for taking the time. And again, we're praying for you and everyone down there in New Orleans right now.
Thank you very much. Those prayers mean a great deal.
All right, now to Belarus, where amid a crackdown by the government, a Catholic priest has been convicted of high treason and is sentenced to 11 years in jail. Father Heinrich Akalatovich was accused of criticizing the government. The 64-year-old denied the charges. The move comes ahead of presidential elections later this month. Alexander Lukashenko appears set to win a 7th term. One human rights group says that this is the first time a Catholic priest has been convicted of criminal charges since the fall of communism. Today, the Vatican honored the life of Cardinal Angelo Amato, who died on December 31st at the age of 86. The funeral mass for the late cardinal was held in St. Peter's Basilica. The former prefect of the Vatican's Congregation for the Causes of Saints oversaw numerous canonizations, including Mother Teresa's. He served in various positions at the Holy See over the course of 4 decades. Pope Francis says that even in times of recent suffering, Cardinal Amato abandoned himself to the goodness of the Holy Father. And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including a lot of chatter about the new speaker. Why tomorrow is a huge day for Louisiana Republican Mike Johnson. And looking for a New Year's resolution, we have a suggestion from Pope Francis. Welcome back. The 119th Congress begins tomorrow, and once again, House Speaker Mike Johnson is fighting for his political life. Despite support from President-elect Donald Trump, the Louisiana Republican faces a struggle to retain the gavel in the U.S. House of Representatives. All right, let's check in now with Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales. So, Eric, could we see multiple votes before we have a speaker?
Oh, most definitely, Tracy. You know, tomorrow could be a very long day. The new Congress officially begins at noon, and the first order of business is to vote for a new speaker. You may recall Republicans have a razor-thin majority, and Congressman Tom Massey of Kentucky has already said that he's not voting for Speaker Johnson. Others are on the fence. Meanwhile, New York Congressman Mike Lawler says Speaker Johnson has done a great job despite difficult circumstances.
He inherited a mess when Matt Gaetz and 7 of my colleagues teamed up with 208 Democrats to remove Speaker McCarthy, which, as I've said many times, is the single stupidest thing I've ever seen in politics. But this would be equally as dumb.
Meanwhile, others like Republican Congressman Thomas Massie have already said that they won't vote for Johnson. Massie wrote on X, "Mike Johnson is the next Paul Ryan. On January 3rd, 2025, I won't be voting for Mike Johnson. I hope my colleagues will join me because history will not give America another do-over." Others are throwing different names into the ring. Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote on X, "I'd be open to supporting Elon Musk for Speaker of the House. Doge can only truly be accomplished by reining in Congress to enact real government efficiency." At least a dozen are undecided, including House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris.
We obviously have a lot of important things to do in January, but we do need to consider whether, if we're going to advance Mr. Trump's agenda, whether the current leadership is what we need.
I remain undecided, as do a number of my colleagues, because we saw so many of the failures last year that we are concerned about that might limit or inhibit our ability to advance the president's agenda.
Democrats say they're ready to step in and help Republicans govern.
If past his prologue, we know that regardless of who gets the gavel, Mike Johnson or otherwise, he is going to need Democratic votes, though, to legislate. He is going to need Democratic votes to be able to enact the reforms that he is promising.
All agree it's time to get to work.
Having a protracted fight over the speakership will not only distract from that, it'll frankly imperil our ability to do it.
And President-elect Donald Trump is now reportedly wading into the battle, calling on Congressman Chip Roy today on the phone. He says he's still undecided, Chip Roy. Now, depending on how many members are in attendance, Johnson can only afford to lose either 1 to 3 votes. Now, some may vote present, further complicating the process. Democrats, they're already throwing their support behind Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, making it a tough numbers game for Speaker Johnson. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
All right, happening now back here in the United States. The Sikh Conference is underway in Salt Lake City, Utah, and in Washington, D.C. 20,000 young people turned out to be edified and encouraged to seek Christ in their lives.
There are 3 truths that every single human heart was created to hear. 1, Jesus saves us, but he also befriends us. Number 2, that friendship is where we find the rest that every single one of us is looking for. And number 3, Jesus did not come to instill fear, but to conquer every single fear we face.
You can go a long time without enjoyment and plenty long without satisfaction, but I defy any one of you in here to go 10 minutes without meaning and have a happy life. You can't do it, because the why of your life is paramount. We're built to ask that question, and we need to know the answer.
And Monte Alvarado, president of EWTN News, is in Salt Lake City now with a look at Sikh.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Behind me, you can see Mission Way. This is where all of the apostolates come from around the country and some from around the world to encounter these students that come once a year to wherever it is that this conference, Sikh, is being held by the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And this year, there are 17,000 young people who have come here hungry for Christ, some of them not even knowing what they're looking for, but knowing that they're looking. And that's why it's called Sikh, where they're going to encounter something different. EWTN is here. The friars are here. We're all here coming together to kick off the Jubilee year in Salt Lake City, a place that doesn't really know the Catholic faith as well as we wish it would. It has had missionaries in the past, but it really is a place where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the dominant majority. But Bishop Solis, who I spoke to, he's the bishop here in Salt Lake City, he is so excited that so many young people are here to really turn on the faith so that people can see that Catholics are alive and well in Salt Lake, in Utah, and of course, the Church in America. So there's hope here. There's hope for all of us, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you and knowing that the rest of our audience is going to tune in for the talks that we'll have later on this evening, streamed and broadcast by EWTN. It's Father Mike Schmitz tonight, and later on in the week you'll have Monsignor Shea and Sister Miriam, who everyone will remember from the National Eucharist Congress. Thank you so much, Tracy. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you so much, Monse. And you can follow all that Sikh 25 has to offer right here on EWTN. We'll broadcast the major events live through the weekend, so you will not miss out on anything. Tune in. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, guidance from Our Lady. Pope Francis tells the faithful why they should entrust the new year to the Blessed Mother. Plus, learn about a year-long celebration for something that took place back in 1975. We'll explain. Francis has a New Year's recommendation for the faithful. He says if we entrust 2025 to the Blessed Virgin Mary, then she will lead us to Christ.
Dio si fa vicino, è misericordioso, e compassionevole.
During Mass yesterday for the Solemnity of Mary, Most Holy Mother of God, Pope Francis reminded us that God became truly man through a human womb, and that this shows us that God has a face and a name and calls us to have a relationship with him. January 1st also marked the World Day of Peace, and the Holy Father encouraged everyone to follow Mary's example for building a culture of understanding and nonviolence. Well, staying in Rome, and the Jubilee year of 2025 officially began at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major with help from a cardinal from Lithuania and an ancient bell. At his homily, Cardinal Rolandas Makaricas said that the Blessed Virgin is a guiding light for all humanity, adding that, quote, no one is excluded. Mary, our mother, is beside every one of us. The Lithuanian cardinal also said the bell has been calling the faithful to prayer since the church's first Jubilee. The next holy tour will be open Sunday at St. Paul outside the walls. And finally tonight, this weekend marks the feast of the first American-born saint, and the celebration is set to last more than just a day. St. Elizabeth Ann Seton was born in 1774 in New York City. She is credited with helping to launch Catholic education in the U.S., and her religious order is dedicated to reaching out to the most needy in North America. She was canonized in 1975, and her shrine in Emmitsburg, Maryland, has big plans for the 50th anniversary. And joining us now is Rob Judge, Executive Director of the National Shrine of St. Elizabeth Ann Seton in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Rob, great to have you back on the show. We appreciate it. You know, a lot to discuss regarding Mother Seton and the 50th anniversary of her canonization. But I want to start with her feast day on Saturday. What do you all have planned?
Absolutely, Tracy. Thank you for having me on. So, of course, it's her feast day, the celebration of her passage from this life to the next. We're going to be opening a brand new exhibit at 11 a.m. entitled One of Us, which really will tell the story of her canonization, followed by a 12 noon Mass. Archbishop William Lori, Archbishop of Baltimore, will be our primary celebrant. That'll actually air later in the day at 6 o'clock on EWTN. Yeah, that's so exciting. Let's talk about the 50th anniversary. I understand the museum for the Seton Shrine has been her as a new exhibit on her canonization. That is, what can visitors expect to see? So in this exhibit, we're going to tell the amazing story that led up to her canonization. Of course, she's the first native-born American to be declared a saint of the church. So it's just a tremendous milestone for the church in the United States. And we're going to tell everything that led up to that. And you know, that includes the three miracles that led to the canonization, all the work that the sisters and the parishes all across the country did to advocate for her canonization, including thousands of petitions from the laity that went over to the Holy See over about 130-year time period. Yeah, that's really amazing. Rob, what else do you have planned for this year? Well, you know, the exhibit also will highlight the many other American saints. So there's over 30 additional saints since 1975 when Mother Seton was canonized. So we want to highlight some of their stories as well, really to point to the universal call to holiness, right? That we're all called to be saints and we all have that opportunity. And then as we go through the year, we're leading a national celebration with parishes across the country. There's over 200 parishes and schools that are named after Elizabeth Ann Seton. We've been hearing from many of them. They're planning celebrations for the actual anniversary date, which is September 14th. So on that day here in Emmitsburg, it will be a very big day with masses, speakers, tours of her original historic houses, and just a wonderful celebration. So all of that, in addition to that, we're going to be working on initiatives to promote pilgrimage through the year, either here to the National Shrine or to local shrines.
That's great, Rob. And before I let you go, where can folks get more information?
So they can find out a lot more at setonshrine.org. And on our main website, you'll see a link up in the top left there to 50 years, which has all of the information about the anniversary activities, all the events that we have through the years. There's also many videos on Elizabeth Ann Seton's life, short videos, and weekly reflections where you can learn more about her amazing life and her spirituality.
Well, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today and talking to us about all this. We really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you, Tracy. God bless you too, and happy Feast Day.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.